Good evening, everybody. Tonight, I want to talk about why small is the new big. This is the AmLaw 100. To me, that's the old big. We saw an explosive growth in the size of practices in the 70s, throughout the 90s, even a little bit in the 2000s. But what I want to talk about is the AmLaw 600,000. All the other attorneys that are in private practice. What we call SML, small to mid-sized law practices. And I want to talk about how technology is creating the collaborative consumption economy. But first, I want to go back in time a little bit, because the practice of law for most of the history of this country has been a small endeavor. Does anybody recognize this law practice? It's the law practice of Daniel Webster, famous, Secretary of State, senator, advocate in front of the Supreme Court, solo practitioner, and author of the dictionary, which everybody reads and enjoys every day. It's actually not true. That was Noah Webster, but I just want to see who's listening because it's late in the day. Does anybody recognize this practice? It's right down the block in Chicago. And we have a lot of Chicagoans. Not in Chicago, but in Illinois. Abraham Lincoln's practice. At the most, only had one other partner during his legal practice. A typical SML. Fast forward to today, and we see an explosion in that side of the practice, returning back to the halcyon SML days. Make up 75 to 80% of private practitioners. 75 to 80% of them are solo practitioners. And they make up 55 to 60% of aggregate revenues out there. I don't want to get into a lengthy analysis of why that is. Let's just say that there are social and economic pressures and probably associates who don't want to wait 27 months to find out if they made partner. And the fun thing is, I think this is great because it returns back to the entrepreneurial solo practitioner rooted in their community, advocating for their peers. And I'm not the only one who thinks this because it's coming to a theater near you a couple of weeks ago. That might be another Lincoln, not actually Abraham Lincoln. So what's the real difference between small law and a big firm? It really boils down to scaled resources. And I think what a lot of people have been talking about tonight is that technology is unleashing a revolution in the cloud that allows you to replicate that same kind of scale. So it's doing away with barriers of space and even time, and it's allowing small businesses and individuals to operate on a much larger level in the global economy. So Airbnb, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, it's a crowdsourced community marketplace for excess inventory in the real estate market. That's a fancy way of saying people rent out spare rooms or their second house to other people. I used it for New Year's Eve. I got a place in Palm Beach for a third of the price of a hotel, twice as much space, twice as much value. Company started around 2008, and here's a heat map of how many listings were in Paris at that time. Explosive growth to the point where today there's an Airbnb on almost every corner in Paris. 600,000 listings, 6 million guests last year, 193 countries, and a record of 250,000 guests on one night, New Year's Eve, when I got a place. But there's 249,000 other people also. And that's given it a valuation of $10 billion, which makes it more valuable than Wyndham, makes it more valuable than Hyatt hotels, and Forbes says it's minted its founders as the latest billionaires in the new sharing economy. That's an economy that's based on reputation capital. It's not just paper currency anymore. It's reviews about you online that's more valuable than who you know. And that's great for everybody because that's a truer reflection of your merit. Rachel Botsman, noted TED speaker, author, thought leader in collaboration, says that your reputation capital is going to be far more valuable than your credit report or other things. And so we kind of knew that small was faster than big, but now we know that it can be stronger, it can be smarter, it can be bigger. And that makes all of you with technology the bionic lawyer, except at a fraction of the price. And that's great for everybody because that increases access to advocacy for ordinary Americans. And so Lady Justice holds her sword up, and she looks a lot more like that Hobbesian classic Leviathan, albeit a little bit uglier and a little bit intimidating, I would say. But it's more representative of the communal collaborative body. And for generations that come after me, something like Voltron is probably more apropos. But I think you get the analogy. The analogy is out of many comes one that's a lot more powerful. And so we're taught to think like a lawyer. And what I would say is that technology is enabling small lawyers to to be more like bigger firms. More like Leviathan, more like Voltron, maybe even more like Frankenstein early on. Or maybe we could say like Franken Lawyer. But hopefully much, much smarter. Because the great thing is that the lawyers in the room, you broker in IP. You broker in your intellectual property. And that, you don't need to be a great IP lawyer to know, that's an incredibly valuable asset. That's your mind. That's your counsel. That's incredibly valuable in the new information economy. So maybe Frankenstein isn't the best analogy. But you shouldn't be scared of fire. Because even a caveman knows, a lowly, simple caveman, on these cold and lonely cave nights, that a little bit of technology, like fire, goes a long way. It's a great thing. It's a welcome change. Even something simple like a sling, meaningless piece of cloth, stone, put in the right hand can help small Davids conquer much, much bigger Goliaths. And that's how small is the new big. And the beautiful thing is, it's going on right now, right here, and it's ushering in a new age of advocacy. Thank you, everybody.